And what's going on, everybody? Welcome back to another episode of the Designated Players, an MLS podcast. On this week's MLS news, we're covering some pretty big stories. First, Olaf Mellberg is out in St. Louis after just 15 games. Is it too soon? And what is St. Louis's problem? Then, on Luciano Acosta's return to TQL Stadium, he was booed heavily by the FCC faithful. After so many great years at the club, is it deserved, or are the FCC fans out of line? And finally, while San Diego FC has had a brilliant start to life on the pitch in MLS, the scenes off of it leave room for improvement to say the least. After yet another instance of poor fan behavior, how can San Diego FC get a hold of their fans and keep people safe? I'm Andrew, that's Connor, and here is this week's MLS news. Connor Wright, how are you, my friend?
Andrew Barnacle, I am doing great, my friend.
Nice. That's weird. We don't use last names on the show very much, but most people know who we are.
No, I don't. I don't like to use my last name. You're putting it out there.
Yeah, because Connor Wright is so easy to track down.
Also, not like the fact that my name is on the screen the entire time anyway.
Literally.
Listen, but you're
Oh,
breaking the fourth wall for the audio listeners. That's
good.
not fair to them.
Good. Drive him directly to YouTube because we're about to have a video hit 1,000 views all because of a thumbnail, baby. Absolute scenes. If you don't know what it is, you're gonna have to go over to YouTube and check it out. It is blowing up over there. So before we dive into this and get into our scarf for the week, make sure you are following us wherever you get your podcasts, so you know when all of our episodes goes live, and follow us on the social medias, specifically on YouTube. We're really pushing to get more subscribers. We're almost at 800, so go ahead and help us out over there, and then follow us on all the other ones too: Twitter, Blue Sky, TikTok, Instagram. We post all over the place. So with that out of the way, why don't we jump into Scarf of the Week? What are you rocking today?
For
Nice.
Lucho, on topic, we're talking about Cincinnati.
With an upside down scarf. I like it. Mine's right here.
Eh,
I'll tell you,
upside
I
down,
almost
whatever.
I almost grabbed that one. And I was like, nope, I know Connor's gonna take it. Because I looked at the title. I'm like, nope, there's no way. Um, because I know you don't have one of these. I don't think you have one of these. Rock that San Diego.
I do not.
Yeah. Well, I brought San Diego out because part of the topic, and I knew we both had the same St. Louis one too, so I didn't want to pull that out in case we were going to duplicate. But I got two more in today. Let's see if we can point them out. Okay, just hung them up. We got right here,
Minnesota.
Minnesota Los Loons,
Believe I have
and
that
we
one as well.
and we got this guy,
New England.
New England. So we're missing one more, and it says it should come tomorrow, and then it's one for every team. How crazy is that?
Well, it's not going to show up when I steal it.
Oh yeah, you think you're gonna come all the way down here and steal it? I hope so.
Oh
I'd
no,
love to see it.
I just already rerouted it. I just hacked into your system.
Oh
I
word.
realized my mic was so far away from me. I'm sorry.
Oh word. Yeah, great.
Nobody could
Now we're
hear
gonna
my
have.
great insights if my mic is far away.
Don't worry, I'm muting you the entire episode anyway. So,
Eh,
uh,
par the
well,
course.
we've got the scars out of the way. It's time to talk some news, and let's start. Let's start in St. Louis because why not? St. Louis City, after a blissful start to MLS life, where they topped the Western Conference in year one, had a bit of a rougher second season, which resulted in firing Bradley Carnell halfway through the year. After getting their team healthy, adding strong reinforcements, and hiring a new coach in Olaf Mellberg, they sit 14th in the West with 11 points, two wins, and are not in the wooden spoon race just yet, thanks to the LA Galaxy. Due to this start, Olaf Mellberg has been released from his job, now owning the second shortest tenure in MLS history as a coach. The sound that you hear is the anti-MLS crowd crying as they try to convince everybody that they walk by that there are no consequences in MLS without pro rel, even though coaches are getting fired left, right, and center. But the question is St. Louis jumping the gun? Is this just far too soon?
No, no. I mean, come on. They're sitting on 11 goals scored in 15 appearances so far. Like, you got to change it up. I mean, listen, I don't remember if we talked about this at the start of the season, so I don't want to I might be contradicting myself here, but I don't really get the route they were going with this one, considering that Mellberg has only coached in what looks like Sweden or Finland, possibly, and has never even like played in Major League Soccer or even like the Bundesliga. So I just not really getting the direction of the coach hire. I kind of feel like they swung and missed on this one because this team is like we talked about it in their first year. They have an identity, right? And their identity is Bundesliga. So I think you really can't go wrong if you bring in someone with MLS experience, regardless of what route you're going with. Like at the end of the day, that's still the league you're playing in. But I feel like the alternative is you could go the Bundesliga route and just get a guy that's familiar with, how they play in the Bundesliga. And, a lot of guys being from or like coming over from that league will have experience to be able to kind of like mesh into that system pretty easily. So I don't really get the direction that they were going with bringing in Mellberg. So, I don't necessarily think that this is the wrong move to move on this quickly. So, they have enough talent to turn things around. I think it's, a good opportunity for them to bring in somebody who can still make the most of the season. I think they're out of the question for supporter shield at this point, but almost anybody that's not named the LA Galaxy or CF Montreal is probably still in the race for the playoffs right now. So, there's time for them to turn things around and still make a good push. So I don't necessarily think this is too fast.
Yeah, definitely in Sweden, by the way, is where he coached. But I remember talking about this when we hired or when he got hired, that it was like it didn't make sense because of the way that they were building and what he had done. I mean, there was this whole thing that he was a coach who could get a lot out of nothing, and he took his team from the third division to the first division in successive promotions in Sweden, and whatever reason he chose not to renew his contract before coaching in the top flight of Sweden. Then he goes to Denmark, and he was there. He was in Denmark for 2 months. I'm reading this now. 2 months before he leaves to go back to the Swedish first division, and then got them relegated. It was like it just didn't make sense, this hire, for what they were trying to do. But they brought him in anyway for whatever the vision is. And this is where it all doesn't make sense to me, because the report had come out that the reason that he got let go is because he wasn't playing the style of soccer that the front office want. Didn't they hire him in the first place?
I know.
The issue isn't that, he didn't have the chance to implement his style, or he didn't get the team that he wants. You hired him thinking that he was going to be plug and play with the team that you had, which isn't a bad idea considering the roster that you had, right? I think we both agreed that when St. Louis came in, that roster was a roster that should have been firing at the very least pushing for top four, if not comfortably in the regular playoff spots. But if you're sitting here 15 games into the season, you're like, this isn't what we signed up for. We need to go somewhere else. Your issue isn't the coach, right? Is it too soon? Is it not too soon? Arguable, right? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if that's your takeaway from 15 games, the issue is not the coach. Who's dropped the ball on scouting this guy and his style of play? Right? This isn't 1935. You can find film on any pro team anywhere in the world. Did nobody watch his style and they just brought him in for an interview? It was like, oh, what'd you do? Oh, you had two promotions back to back? Oh, you're in, because that's what we need in American soccer is promotions, right? Like, who dropped the ball on this?
Yeah, yeah, I'd agree with you on that one. I mean, it kind of it reeks of like we didn't properly do our homework on this one and maybe just like rushed somebody in for the sake of having somebody. Whereas like, maybe it is best to kind of like take some time on it. I mean, that's what Minnesota did, and it wasn't like it killed their season.
Yeah, no, absolutely. And that's kind of the whole focus, is like we put it out there all the time that MLS is not an easy league to get accustomed to, right? It's not something you come in, you're just like, oh yeah, it's the third division in Sweden. I'm gonna walk in and take these guys to the top, no problem. It's not easy to get yourself used to the way that this works. So giving somebody 15 games and being like, yep, you didn't do what we want to do, you're out. I don't think it's necessarily fair, regardless of which style you want to play, or which direction you want the team to go. St. Louis are underperforming, no doubt about it, and they should be higher where they're at. But is that a coach problem? Maybe. Is it the front office's problem because they hired the guy that wasn't a good fit anyway? Absolutely. Right. So, I put this question in there in the notes that we had, like, is it a coach problem or a roster problem? To me, I don't think it's either. I think it's the front office's problem because they took two puzzle pieces and tried to make them fit when they very clearly were not going to fit. Right? The coaches don't bend their system of play because they're told to, and not every player is going to fit a specific system. So you either give him time to take this team and mold it into what he wants his system to look like, or you don't bring him in the first place and you take somebody who's going to take your team and implement the system that you want. But the fact that you just brought him in and was like, "Yep, this is the guy because he's got a cool beard and he played in the World Cup in 2006." What are we doing?
No, I agree with you that I think it's the front office. You know, it's I think I don't think this is necessarily an indictment that like Mellberg's a bad coach. You know, it's 15 games in a brand new league. There should be enough time to adapt. I don't think 15 is enough to adapt, but I don't necessarily think, I'm not necessarily jumping to like, oh, they got rid of him too quickly because I just don't think this was the right situation for either party, to be honest. As much as, we want to be able to say like, oh, the front office should have done their homework a little bit better. I mean, Mellberg still agreed to this contract knowing what he's coming into as well. It's not a mystery who was going to be on the roster. You could do a little bit of homework and be like, all right, a lot of Bundesliga guys on this team, probably a lot of MLS guys on this team. If I'm going to come into this job compared to what I've done so far in my career, I'm probably going to have to be flexible or make some changes. Like, I still think most of the blame goes to the front office, but Mellberg agreed to come here. It wasn't like he was forced against his will to come here and deal with the situation. Like he should know what he's coming into and he should know what players he's going to have available to him. And I think, if he is being stuck to his system, then he needs to be willing to be more flexible if you're going to switch out of a league, and like possibly not have that same level of success that you've had previously.
Yeah, listen, he definitely took the job and he seemed excited. He seemed like he was ready to go, but very very big miss on this one for sure. But you may have noticed that in the preview I mentioned that this is the second shortest tenure in MLS history because the first belongs to a friend of ours, Miguel Angel Ramirez in Charlotte, who famously showed up the day before their first ever game in history and said that they were, and I'm paraphrasing, royally screwed because the roster sucked and they weren't going to win anything because the team didn't invest properly. He was fired after 14 games. Mellberg was not that dismal about his time and his team, but he's also gone. Just to talk about how Charlotte has advanced since the Miguel Angel Ramirez days, they went on to Christian Latanzio after that, who did all right, but he only snuck them in to the play-in game. After that year, he was removed for Dean Smith, who then got them to the first round of the playoffs last year before losing to Orlando. He's now in his second year and has them fighting for a play-in spot with a roster significantly better than they've ever had before. Charlotte's been okay, not great, after all this nonsense between coaches. But now we're going to St. Louis, who is going on manager 4, maybe 5, since they joined the league 3 years ago. And they seem on pace to miss the playoffs for the second straight season if something doesn't change. Likewise, they also have yet to record a win in the playoffs. They got swept in the first round by the number 8 seed, Sporting Kansas City, their rivals. Will St. Louis ever get back to the top with this I guess inconsistency, for lack of a better term?
I mean, if I'm going to take a glass half full approach here, I
Lame.
like that the both the teams, Charlotte and St. Louis, are not willing to settle for poor results or mediocrity. It seems like both teams are pretty hungry to build the teams and be successful. I mean, like just look at the transfer policy for Charlotte. I mean, they were constantly throwing their name in the ring for big time players to bring over to their team, and they finally got one across in bringing in Zaha this last offseason. So I think it's like for the fan base, I would think that, to an extent, it's a good sign that the owners are in the mindset of like we want to win, we want to be successful, as opposed to a situation like KC or who's another good example? I mean, even Red Bull, right? Where you kind of just settle for making the playoffs every year and then just
How
selling your
dare
players
you?
on. Are you
That
going to say I'm
disrespect is
wrong?
that disrespect is not warranted on this episode. So
You weren't expecting that shots fired, were you?
no, I didn't need to catch a stray like that today. But you know what? Here we are.
But yeah, so if here's the thing though, because you could take it too far. So you can, I think there's a good balance where you have a hungry ownership that wants to be successful, and then you become too far when you become a Watford. For those familiar with what's going like the English game, Watford is like a revolving door of managers from everything that I remember hearing. Just constantly new guys in all the time. And that has not resulted in success for them. I mean, they've been in the championship for a while now. Like, I think that's where you get too far. I mean, you're not allowing your players to develop under a constant system. And, it's harder for guys to develop because they're constantly having to learn new things from different coaches. So, it's kind of like a bell curve. I know you love your statistics and your bell curves. So, you got to find that sweet spot at the top where you keep that hunger, but you don't let it go overboard to where you're now stagnating yourself.
Yeah, that's a lot of words to describe. How do I put this nicely? They need to figure this out. Like I said, I'm not even gonna. I was gonna try and make some joke to like poke fun at you. I'm not even gonna do that. They got to figure this out. It's you cannot have success without consistency in your play style, consistency in your message, right? They need to find somebody who they can trust to take control for a few years and run with it. This really feels to me like the front office is out here trying to disprove this like no consequences in MLS thing way too hard. Right? They're just firing managers for fun at any slight inconvenience. They're Chelsea. They're basically Chelsea. I'm sorry. Did you not wear pointed toe shoot? Gone. Next. 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 Like, what are we doing here? How are you like Bradley Carnell goes wins the West in their first ever game in their first ever season, and then a quarter of the way through the season, I forget how long it was. He's having a slight struggle, and you're like, nope, he's out. You let an interim take over for the rest of the year to replace him with this guy, and then after 15 games, he's out again. You're on the look for another manager. It feels insane to me, right? They got to calm down. They got to figure out where they want to go and who's going to get them there. This roster's solid. They don't need to reinvent the wheel. Just find somebody you can trust to get you through these bumps. Because I promise you, you're not going to get any higher up this table if you just keep rotating managers in and out, in and out, in and out.
Yeah, I mean that's what I was saying. They're trending towards being like a Watford where you're just new manager in like twice a year at least, and then you
Mm-hmm.
get yourself stuck and you can't advance any further because it's hard for your players to kind of adapt to a new system every 6 months or 3 months.
Gotcha. Okay, yeah. So you started speaking Eurosnob, and I tuned out.
That yeah, that usually is where your brain shuts off.
Yeah. Once you mentioned anybody outside the continental United States, I was like, nope, no, thank you, don't like. Speaking of teams inside the continental United States, it's Luciano Acosta's time to be brought into the realm of the designated players because it has been just a few months since Luciano Acosta was traded for cash to FC Dallas, and lots of it, by the way. And this past weekend, he returned to TQL Stadium to play in front of his former hometown fans in another club's colors, FC Dallas, if those of you who are not familiar. He expected this warm welcome home and instead was met with a chorus of boos from the FCC faithful. When asked about it post game, he basically says, "They booed me, and I don't think I deserve that. I feel bad because I won the Supporters Shield here. I was the first MVP for club. I won the first trophy for the club. I think I deserve more than what I got." This was met with a ton of conversation, especially on MLS 360, where Taylor Twellman put it really, really well about his thoughts, which mirror mine, and I'm assuming mirror yours, but you're due for a bad take every once in a while, so we'll see. Should star players, big designated players, players who have won lots of things, be openly welcomed back to the club when they return, whenever it may be?
Listen, you're setting up the ultimate fence sitting question here because
Don't you
it's
dare
it's
sit on this
always going
fence.
it's always going to depend on the situation.
Oh,
If
Lord.
you left on good terms, then yeah, you should be. If you were a big time star for the team and you did really well and you helped them win trophies and stuff and you left on good terms, you should be welcomed back. If you leave Lucho Acosta terms, then it should be understandable why the fans are frustrated, at least in the short term. I completely get it. Like the manner in which he kind of forced his way out. I shouldn't even say kind of. He forced his way out of the team, even in a way that didn't really like give them. I think the organization did really well to kind of replace him and bring in Evander. I think that was really, really well done by them. But I don't feel like he necessarily left them a ton of time to kind of sort out a replacement. It's like, of course they're going to be upset. I mean, what they have every right to feel upset with the way that you kind of built this relationship with them and then like tore it down so quickly and so aggressively at the end. I do think in the long term, people will start to like loosen up and kind of remember what he did for the organization because genuinely he did so like an unbelievable amount for this organization. Like he was a huge, if not the biggest catalyst for turning around this dumpster fire of an organization and turning them into a consistent winner and bringing them, like he said, a supporter shield and the club's first ever MVP. So I think in the long term, people will lighten up and start to kind of remember the better times. But yeah, in the short term, I completely understand why they feel this way, and I don't think that stars should just be welcomed back in no matter what if they've left on bad terms.
Okay. So I probably should have phrased that question better. So your answer is no, which the question was really should they be welcomed back with no, I guess like no strings attached kind of thing. Like with no I can't even think of the right words now, but like
No,
if they come back
strings yeah, strings attached is
just
like I would
open
say
arms all the time, forget the past, like
yeah, like
we
no
love you.
regard for how things ended.
Perfect. This is why we keep you around. You have one of these every 2 months, and you pay for yourself, right?
Yes, my
Um,
answer would be no, they shouldn't be.
yeah, and I'm with you there because just because you're good at one point doesn't mean you deserve anything, right? I think, and I'm completely with you. The way that you leave matters a ton, right? And also where you go. He didn't leave the way that he should have, right? I don't think the way that he left is something that deserved admiration without reservation. That's my new phrase. I'm using that all the time.
Nice.
Yeah. He forced his way. He forced his way out, right? And you mentioned that before. He made it public. He wanted to leave. He held out a camp. He did all the things that he should have done to push his way out, right? But then he went to another team in the same league, and that's the problem, right? If he goes out and he's like, "Hey, listen, I want you to let me leave. I'm not showing up because PSG's on the door and I want to go." I don't think many MLS fans, FCC fans even, are out here throwing a fit. I think they're like, yeah, right. PSG comes knocking, you go. And I use that because that almost happened, right? But saying you want to leave just because you don't want to be there anymore and then going to a team that plays in the same league basically highlights the fact that you're like, yep, I don't even want to be here. It's the place, not the league or the team. It's here. I don't want to be here. Right. And that's where the sour fan base or the sour taste in the mouth of the fan base comes, especially one like FC Cincinnati that's so dedicated. Right. Yeah.
Yeah, absolutely.
So the question then is like, was he right to feel hard done by? Did he deserve a little bit more than what he got?
Again, I'll say in the short term, I think it was totally just reactions. I think in the long term, and maybe you could tell me if you think this is a hot take or not, but I think in the long term, it would be harsh to continue to have this react like this much of a negative reaction towards him, just considering again everything he's done for this organization. If people don't want to hold him in the same regard like as he once was, I totally understand that. But I still feel like in the long term, you got to be able to recognize everything that he did for the organization and absolutely turning them around and from a horrible situation that they were in before into a consistently successful team. I think it was just I don't in my opinion I don't think he should feel hard done by it in the short term. If it continues this way, then I do.
Yeah, and I think that's pretty good. I think were the boos a bit much in the short, like I said, I think I like the way that you phrase it, short term versus long term, right? I don't think short term it's a problem, right? Could they have just sat there and been like, "Oh yeah, you play for another team, we're not even going to recognize you anymore, whatever." Yeah, but that's not how this works. This is professional sports, right? People have these strong feelings towards their teams, and what Acosta did is a prime example of how to get a whole fan base to turn on you, right? But if we go 5 years from now, or 5 years after he retires, I don't know when he's going to retire, but if we go 5 years after he retires, and people are still like, "You're the worst, I can't believe you," yeah, then you got a problem, right? Because I can understand the first year, right? Oh man, you left and you left us high and dry. We were supposed to do all these great things with you, and you were supposed to be retire here and whatever. Sure, be upset about this, but if you can't look back after he's done and be like, yeah, we're nowhere without him, and he brought us to where we're at, then that's on you, right? So the question, the last little bit here is, were the fans out of line? It kind of goes hand in hand with this, but I was trying to write this up, and then I saw the clip about Taylor Twellman, and he put what I was trying to say really, really well. And it's this idea that the fans have shown maturity in this. And what he meant by that, and kind of what I have put down in here, was the idea that in MLS 2.0, Most people were not diehard fans. Most people just existed to watch the game, something to do, watch the big players. The league and the fan bases have grown up to where they have an admiration for the club. They have an admiration for the stars of said club. And when they hurt you, you give it back to them, which is not something we've seen very frequently, right? Because sports love villains, right? There's nothing better than getting excited to play against another team that you despise because of something in the past, right? Derbies, revenge games after big losses, people who have wronged you, right? Players who have done you wrong. And I'm not saying that, Acosta doing this is making him a league-wide villain, but it hurts the fan base and they don't forget it. And I love that. FCC, and to take this to a different point of view, right? FCC and Philly have knocked Red Bull out of so many cup competitions in recent memory. But if I went to Red Bull Arena tomorrow and we're playing Atlanta, right? Atlanta's another good one, right? Atlanta 2018, the whole scuffle in between players and the referee blowing the game and sorry, I'm getting off track. But that game has a sour taste in some of our mouths. If I went up to Red Bull Arena and was like, "Oh yeah, we're playing Atlanta," 75% of the people there, not a clue, would not know, right? And that is a sign of how far this league still needs to go in terms of fan engagement and time and growth and things of all that nature, right? But the fact that the FCC fans are giving it back to him because of what he did to the club and to the fans, and not just, oh yeah, he's just a good player who left and didn't want to be here anymore. We need more dedication like that in this league. I love it.
Yeah, I mean that's a great way to put it. I think you're turning the what's the phrase for it again? The fair weather fan into more of a hardcore fan,
Yeah,
where
for
you
sure.
you genuinely build these relationships with these players, even in good ways too. Like the way that I saw Atlanta fans losing their minds when Miguel Almiron was like linked to Charlotte and possibly not, coming back to the league and not coming back
Right,
to
right.
Atlanta. It's because of the bond you build with like your star players there. Like there's not a single Atlanta fan or I shouldn't say that. There's definitely some because they're delusional, but like almost every Atlanta fan wanted Miguel to come back to Atlanta because of the bond that they've built together. And if Miggy were to turn around tomorrow and be like, I want out and go to another team within the league, maybe even a rival, people would be pissed about it because you have such a strong relationship with your star players.
Yeah, and rightfully so, right? And that's the next step, right? I've watched a lot of MLS, as people can imagine. I watched a little bit of European soccer. The gap in quality is tightening. And what I mean by that is I'm not saying that Columbus Crew are going to walk on and beat Man City 7 times out of 10. But the Columbus Crew could go up against a lot of different clubs in Europe, not just England, right? Europe's bigger than England, people. But the Columbus Crew can walk on and really compete with a lot of these lower level Belgian teams, lower level championship teams, lower level Dutch teams. Like it's not crazy to think, but the reason that people see it as differently as they do, in my opinion, is that when Red Bull, and I'll use Red Bull as an example because I watched them on Wednesday and there might have been 2,000 people in the stands, maybe weather and midweek game excluded, right? When Red Bull put together a sequence of play that is really, really pretty, something you would see out of a European team, and they score, and you've got 2,000 people like, yeah, it looks dull as hell. It's like, oh yeah, cool, whatever. When Everton are playing dump ball and flick one on and volley one in off of a pinball in the box, and the entire stadium goes crazy, it makes everything look so much better, right? So we need the fan bases to turn over as much as we need the play on the field to turn over.
Yeah, couldn't have said it better myself.
And that takes us to a really interesting conversation to end the episode, and it's with the newest club in MLS, San Diego FC, because after just 15 weeks as an MLS club, San Diego have made headlines, but for a lot of the wrong reasons. Most recently, this comes as a fight in the stands with LA Galaxy supporters after their last match. Now, this comes after they opened their first ever home match with the P chant. I'm not going to use the term, but that was very, very blatantly, obviously used in their first match. And then there was another series of brawls in the parking lot after a match against LAFC earlier this year. The situations have cast shadows over the incredible start to life in MLS for the Californian side, as well as sparked fears for the upcoming competitions like the World Cup, the Gold Cup, and the Club World Cup. So the first question I want to ask you, does this take away from their image on the pitch? Do we think that their success is being overlooked by what their fans are doing?
I'd say generally no. I mean, I think outside of the LA, San Diego area and your MLS sickos, most people probably don't know about any of these incidents. You know, your kind of more casual New York City fan has no idea about any of these. You know, they show up to watch NYCFC play. They probably know a couple of the star players in the league just from marketing they've seen at the games they've gone to, and that's kind of the extent of it. And I think there's a lot of fans like that that follow Major League Soccer. And you know what? That's fine for the state that Major League Soccer is in right now. But those fans, I don't believe, will have heard any of this stuff about San Diego fans. Maybe I think the only way that they would really experience it is if, you know, something happened to NYC fans and then that kind of sparked a discussion within their community. But it sounds like a lot of this stuff is related to within this LA, San Diego region. I think within that region, it definitely is like having an impact on the image of San Diego. But I don't think it's taking away from their success on a national stage. I think people will still look at the table and say, wow, this new team is coming in and they're in second place right now. They're doing really well. Like, you know, I keep hearing Chucky Lozano's name and Dreyer's name thrown around. And it's like, I'm learning a little bit more about the club, but I still don't know like much about it at all.
Interesting, because I think it does have an impact to a degree. I'm not saying it's taking away completely, right? But when St. Louis, and I'll use them because they were the most recent, went on this miracle run to the top, right? Brand new team in the Western Conference, have a really good start to life, right? The conversation was about the brilliant run, how quickly the team gelled together, and how much money each club got paid per back pass to Joao Klaus in their own box, right? Those are the three things people were talking about. But here it's about Andres Dreyer's emergence as a top MLS player and the fact that their fans are doing some of the most ridiculous stuff in the league, right? It's about Chucky Lozano coming over and making an impact, and how the P chant has made its way into American culture, right? Something we've never seen before to this degree, right? It's about Luca De La Torre coming over and playing in his hometown, and if the opposing fans can feel safe to travel and see him play, right? And I think that's a shame that that is tied to it. Now, is it taking directly away from it? No, but it does feel like it has some sort of dampening effect on what they've done, and I think that's a shame. Now, to the level of what it is, right? We're two guys on the East Coast. Don't get a bunch of it, right? But it could be something that's happening a lot in the West Coast, right? And we don't know. Maybe somebody can tell us. But I think the question really is, how do they stop this? Because I think you and I can both agree, and we'll talk about this here in a little bit. You and I can both agree that this probably isn't great for the state of the league. So how do we get this to stop?
No, they definitely have to do something about it. I mean, you can't just consistently have such a hostile place for people to come watch games. I mean, that's just not going to fly. Like, I think, you know, that happens in other countries around the world, especially for this sport, where it really like it is a hostile environment to go there as
Mhm.
an away fan, and you have to be cautious and careful about it. But that's not the state that like Major League Soccer is in right now, and it's not the state that they should be heading towards. It should be a safe place for any away fan to be able to go watch the game and win or lose, not have to like be concerned about their safety at the end of it. The only thing I could think of right now is like a way to stop it is just to like be very harsh on the people that are getting in trouble early on and kind of like making an example of it. And like, hey, listen, you're going to do the same thing as these guys. You're going to get the same punishment where you're, I don't know, banned for life from the stadium. Like you
Mhm.
can't come back to the stadium anymore. And you know, maybe they change it over like along down the line and they change it and it's not a permanent ban anymore or whatever. But I feel like you gotta like just you gotta lay down the law and you gotta lay it down strong and just make sure that it's like well known to everybody that like this is not acceptable here. This will not fly. Honestly, if I'm Major League Soccer and I don't see them necessarily taking the proper steps to stop this and it continues to go on, then I'm stepping in as Major League Soccer as the body and enforcing punishments on the club to make sure that they will take this seriously.
Yeah, I think that's great. I think there's something you can do that's even easier than that to start. You've got players who these theoretically these fans respect really well, right? Chucky Lozano. star of the Mexican national team. The fan base in San Diego, very, very much Mexican American descent, right? We've seen that the supporters groups in those areas are affiliated to that nationality. Have him come out and make a statement, right? A direct conversation with these people saying you need to stop this. This isn't what we want the club to be about. This isn't what we want the team to be focused on. We want to focus on the field. Don't do this, right? Same thing with Mikey Varas, right? He's the head coach of the club who's taking you to really, really good heights right now, right? If the fans have an ounce of respect for the club, calling them out and telling them to quit it with all this hooliganism, it could do wonders. But I haven't seen them do any of that stuff, right? And that's again one of the differences in American soccer versus something overseas where you see people come out all the time, maybe not all the time, but when they need to and make these comments saying this is too much. Stop doing this, right? But then I agree with you. Then it's on the league and the club itself, right? So, I've already seen that the clubs are considering these heavy bans for those involved in the fights, right? Which is great. And I think that's a good step, like you were talking about. But, right, will the league have to step in and do something, right? We've seen that this hooliganism, it's a term that I'm using for this, is punished in other countries with matches behind closed doors and fan banning and things like that. And we've seen MLS step in with fan control before. And I should maybe rephrase that. I don't know if it's necessarily always MLS or if it's the club directly, but when you light flares, when you pop smoke, when you do things that are clearly against these supporters groups' code of conducts, they'll step in and say you've lost your privileges. Will we see them take it to another level and start banning people completely? We've never seen it done in MLS, and it would set an interesting precedent if it's implemented against San Diego because it's a step even farther than we're ever seeing before, right? Because you're taking the actions of a few and impacting the entirety. And I just want to focus kind of on this idea of hooliganism in America before we end the episode. I want to ask you your thoughts about it because there are a handful of these pay for a blue check mark accounts on Twitter that are going to wax poetic about hooliganism is a sign of true fan culture in football and American soccer is weak because they don't embrace it and people don't love their clubs enough to die for them and fight for them and all this. These people are idiots and they're fools, right? If we ever get to a point where American families can't feel safe going to a game, we've lost the absolute plot, in my opinion. And I want to get your thoughts on that. Is it a problem, do you think? Or is it a sign of fan culture? Should we find some sort of happy medium? What are your thoughts here?
No, it's absolutely a problem. And to tie the whole episode back together again, the kind of fan passion that you should be seeing is the stuff you're getting out of FCC fans, the way they react to the Luciano Acosta situation. I mean, that's like, it's not a situation where they're going to, but I mean, listen, I'm sure there's a couple of bad seats in there, but it's a situation where you're not seeing majority of the fans going up like too far and showing their displeasure because there's such a like passion for the club and for the players that play for the club, including former players, that you'll get that reaction in that situation. And it's almost similar to the way that like I remember hearing about like the Trent situation in Liverpool. Your brain could shut off. I just did another England team. But
Who?
I think at first when it came out that he was leaving and going to Madrid, there wasn't this feeling right off the bat of like, oh, well, thank you for everything you've done. Like you've done so much for the club. You've been like a face of the team. Like, I'm so grateful for everything you've done. It's like, how could you do this to us? Like, how could you not say anything about it? How could you just let your contract run out and not let the club get any value for you? It was like frustration because they're so passionate about the team and about their players. That's what I would want to see like more out of the fan base. And I think you're getting that to some extent with like the way that Cincy fans are showing it. So there's absolutely a right way to show passion and grow passion within the fan bases, but the stuff San Diego is doing is absolutely not that.
Yeah, I think that's really brilliantly put, right? Because romanticizing this insanity needs to stop. Like I'm tired and it's very, very small percentage, by the way. I'm not out here saying like, oh, everybody who is a Euro snob wants hooligan. Like I'm not saying that, but I have read a couple of accounts where like, yeah, Americans will never be able to be a real football culture till they can do this. And it's like people just beating the heck out of each other in the streets after Argentina rivalry, River Plate
Mhm.
and
Boca.
Boca. Thank you. I was gonna say Cruz Azul. I'm like, nope. I know they're blue, but don't say Azul. That's wrong. Um, right. And they're like, this is where we need to get to, and like we need fences locking people. Are we
No, that's
kidding?
horrible.
No one should feel unsafe traveling to watch a sports match on a weekend. But it goes both ways too, right? This started because, and from what I'm reading, this is I can't tell you it's corroborated or true or whatever. On opening weekend, some Galaxy fans stole the flag from a supporters group in San Diego, and they held on to it. And then last week they traveled to the stadium and hung it upside down, kind of like taunting them, right? Don't do that, right? Like you don't need to involve other fans in your support of your club, right? Support them with everything that you have on the pitch, but leave the other guys out of it. I'm tired of hearing these stories, and it's in all sports, by the way. It's not just MLS, right? Of people getting attacked because they were wearing a different sports team jersey than you. It's just not that deep. It's just not that deep. Like at some point, someone somewhere has to stand up and put their foot down because hooliganism cannot be the desired outcome for fan culture in America, no matter how many people try and tell you like this is the way it should be, right? It cannot be the path we head down because it is. I don't want to imagine a world where I don't even feel safe most of the time going to Red Bull New York City games. Luckily, I'm with Matt, who's wearing blue, and I'm wearing red, so we kind of don't get bothered by anybody. But every time I leave a Hudson River Derby, I always read on the ride home the update that 4 people got arrested because they fought each other outside the. Stop! Like it's not that deep, and it just doesn't have to get to that point ever. And I don't. I'm tired of it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yeah.
100%.
Well, that's my soapbox moment for the episode, and I think it's a good place to end. So thanks everybody for listening or watching. We hope you enjoyed it. Make sure you follow us, like we said, wherever you get your podcasts. You know when our next episode goes live. We are coming back at you on Wednesday with our mid-season review. I can't believe we're already halfway through the year. That's just pure insanity. But yeah, make sure you're following us on social media as well so we can interact with you guys. That's Twitter, Instagram, YouTube, TikTok, and Blue Sky. Blue Sky, yeah. Just search the designated players and you will find us. But thanks so much again for listening. We hope you enjoyed it. We'll see you next time on the next episode of the Designated Players and MLS podcast. See ya.